All right, today we're going to be talking about a little fitting trick that people in the know like to use, like to talk about. We're going to find out today, though, is something in the know, something you actually need to know. Let's go. Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. Hope you're having a wonderful day. So this video we are going to be talking about and trying to test out a little bit of hard stepping versus soft stepping your golf shafts. Specifically, we're talking about iron shafts here, but we're going to talk about it. We're going to go through a little demonstration, a little test, and actually see what happens when we move around with soft versus hard stepping. Really simply, what is hard stepping or soft stepping? We're basically just changing the flex in the shaft just a little bit in either direction. When we say hard stepping, we're actually talking about making it a little stiffer. And when we say soft stepping, well, we're talking about making it a little softer. All right, when we're talking about hard stepping, soft stepping, we have to remember a couple things. First off, remember there are two basic sizes of irons. So you've got .370, which means, or also referred to as parallel, which means that the bottom section of the shaft here, going all the way up, runs parallel. It's just nice, straight, train tracks. That's how they work. Now, when you have a parallel tip shaft like that, 9 times out of 10, what that means is when you build the golf club, you have to cut some of this section from the tip, and that's going to change the stiffness, and then you cut some from the butt end over here, and that's going to change the length. That's how parallel tip shafts work. Now, the alternative is what's called taper tip, or .355 tip. What that means is you have a shaft where it runs essentially parallel to a certain point, and then up here at the very tip, it tapers in, just like the name suggests. Now, what that means is this is not a shaft that you're ever really going to cut from the tip end to adjust the flex. All of the flex adjustments have been done in the factory. So when you order shafts or when you install shafts, you get a certain shaft that would go in a 7-iron. You get a certain shaft that would go in a 9-iron, and you get a certain shaft that would go in, say, a 5-iron. Now notice each of these shafts is a different length corresponding to the different iron that it's going to go into. The important thing to remember here is, and when you look at the tip section of each of these shafts, this very bottom section, look how short this 9-iron is versus the 7-iron that's kind of in the middle, and look how much longer this bottom section is in the 5-iron. Now what that basically tells us is this 9-iron is going to be a little stiffer versus the 7-iron versus the 5-iron. And we want that because each of the different iron heads weighs a different amount. Your short irons are heavier, hence we have a slightly stiffer shaft to help support that weight. Your 5-iron is a lighter weight head versus the 7 or the 9, so we have a little softer shaft to support that head weight and make sure everything feels about the same. Everything we're going to be talking about from here forward, we are referring to the taper tip, the 355 tip shafts. Specifically, when we say hard stepping, that usually means if you've got a 7-iron head, we're going to take an 8-iron shaft. Again, 8-iron shaft, a little bit stiffer to support the 8-iron head weight. So when it goes into the 7-iron head, it's going to play stiffer. Flip that around. If we're talking about soft stepping, we've got a 7-iron. We're going to take the 6-iron shaft. Again, the 6-iron, a little bit lighter. So when we pair up that shaft with that 7-iron head, it's going to play a little bit softer. All right, last thing on this. This is all happening on the tip section. You're picking out the different shafts to go in different iron heads than you would usually use them with. But I don't want you to get confused and think if I put the 9-iron shaft in an 8-iron, that the length of the final club is not going to be correct, or you're not going to have, your length golf club. Remember, every golf shaft you buy, if it's new, is made longer than what you will finally play it at, because the whole idea is you're going to cut from the butt end to adjust the length. So it's the same thing. Even if we're taking the 8-iron shaft and putting it in the 7-iron head, that doesn't mean that the 7-iron is now going to be shorter, because we adjust the cutting so that the final length is still the same 7-iron length. All right, now let's get back to our testing, our little demonstration here. Now, what I'm actually going to be doing today is not hard stepping or soft stepping in the traditional sense of single stepping. When I say single stepping, I mean the 8-iron into the 7-iron or the 6-iron into the 7-iron. What I'm going to be doing today, in order to try and really force the issue and see what kind of difference it can actually make, we're going to be doing double stepping. Very simply, what does that mean? Well, instead of taking the 8-iron shaft and putting it into the 7-iron, we're going to go 2 steps. We're going to take the 9-iron shaft and put it into the 7 and call that double hard stepping. And on the other side, and what I've got right here, we're going to take not the 6-iron, but the 5-iron shaft, double stepped, and put that in the 7-iron head. Again, remember, this does not change the final length. This is the exact same length golf club as it was with the standard 7-iron shaft. It's just been cut differently here at the butt end. Now, in case you're wondering, there is also going to be a slight weight difference when we either hard step or soft step. When we're talking about these taper tip shafts, they are pretty much always going to be what's called constant weight, so that the weight of the 9-iron shaft, even though it's shorter, is exactly the same as the 5-iron shaft, even though it's longer. What that means is, per inch, that shorter iron shaft, that 9-iron shaft, is going to be heavier. So when we put this 5-iron shaft versus the 7-iron shaft, this 5-iron shaft is going to be slightly lighter. When we put in the 9-iron shaft, it's going to be slightly heavier. Now, truth be told, I don't really notice a big difference in the feel of the flex of it. It doesn't really feel more flexible. That being said, it does look like, thus far, the majority of my shots have been tending a little bit more to the left, which would indicate that the shaft is closing up a little bit more at impact, and we're getting a few more shots to the left. All right, last up, we've got the 9-iron shaft, double hard stepped in the 7-iron head. Again, 2 things to remember here. 1, this is going to be the stiffest option today because this shaft is designed to go with a 9-iron head weight, which is about 14 grams heavier than the 7-iron. Other thing, again, this shaft is not shorter, even though it's a 9-iron. It's been cut to the same final length. So exact same length club, but it is slightly heavier in this case. As we already discussed, hard stepping is going to make the golf club slightly heavier versus using the standard shaft with that head. Really well. Now I'm going to put this out there with the caveat that every golfer is different. We've discussed this numerous times, and so the results I get, what I feel, is not necessarily what you're going to feel, the results that you're going to get. But just from a feel standpoint, where I felt like I didn't really notice the soft stepped shaft feeling that much softer, but I did feel like it was lighter. Strangely, in this case, it's almost the opposite. I feel like I notice the flex or the lack of flex, the stiffness of the shaft, more than I actually notice the weight change in this setup here. Okay, here are all the numbers. First off, let's look at club head speed. As you can see, kept creeping up slightly higher and higher as we went through the test. And also my efficiency kept creeping up higher and higher. Again, this was the order in which I hit these. First in the stock 7-iron configuration, then in the soft step, then in the hard step. So the fact that both those numbers are continually increasing, I think says more to the fact of me just getting more loosened up and my strike pattern just getting a little bit more consistent than anything specific to either of those shaft setups. Path, attack angle, all stayed pretty darn consistent. Here's the ball data. Again, based off of the club head speed, based off of the efficiency. No surprise here that the ball speed also crept up slightly over the entire test. Launch angle and spin, again, you hear some people talking about being able to adjust these things based on hard stepping or soft stepping, and maybe as a better ball striker than me, that is possible, but for me in this test, as you can see, those numbers remained essentially the same. Now, maybe the one thing we could pull out of this data is if we look at the overall dispersion, you can see that the softest, the soft step shaft did miss a little bit further to the left versus the standard setup, and the hard step setup did miss slightly further to the right. Now again, as far as the feel went, when I went into the softer soft step shaft, I really noticed the weight, I thought, more than I noticed the flex. However, when I went into the hard step shaft, that reversed, and I felt like I noticed the stiffness more than I noticed the weight. All that being said, again, based on the numbers, based on all the shots I hit, I did not really see much of any difference. And remember, this was me double stepping. This was not just a single soft step or a single hard step. This was double both of those to really try and give me the best chance of seeing some kind of result, some kind of differentiation between them. And I just didn't really see it. So that's soft stepping, that's hard stepping. You'll have to decide whether you think this is something that's worth spending any time on, worth investigating further. For me at least, didn't really make much of a change. I think there's a lot of other ways that you can change golf shafts, either in weight or profile or even just flex, that are going to have a bigger influence on your golf game. Hey, if you got any questions, leave those down below. If you're not already subscribed to the channel, make sure you go down below, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell icon so you'll be alerted when I post new videos. If you're interested in a fitting, heck, if you want to try out soft stepping versus hard stepping, you can make fitting appointments on my website. All my information is down there. Also, if you're interested in a custom build or a repair, you can get in contact with me through there. Hope you enjoyed it. We'll see you on the next video. Take care.